Sophie was sleeping in the orphanage when a big hand grabbed her. The giant crossed highways, forests, and beaches, jumping onto the clouds, heading to giant country. Sophie was placed on the giant's plate. The giant chopped vegetables vigorously, and Sophie flew from one plate to another. As the giant began to chop vegetables more slowly, Sophie spun around in the bowl. The giant's name was the BFG, the big friendly giant. Unlike the other child-eating giants, he was a vegetarian. The BFG arrived at his secret chamber. There were bottles of various colors. The blue bottles contained good dreams. The red bottles contained nightmares. The BFG picked up a red dream and placed it into the dream-making machine, creating an evil dream. Sophie escaped from the BFG's room and found herself outside. A big hand grabbed Sophie. She was caught by the giant and placed into his mouth. Sophie woke up from the nightmare. The BFG drank some green liquid. After drinking the green liquid, the giant let out a few big farts. These farts had quite the propulsion. A larger carnivorous giant entered the BFG's room. The carnivorous giant smelled Sophie's scent. Terrified, Sophie hid inside a nearby bitter gourd. After the carnivorous giant left, Sophie emerged from the bitter gourd, covered in bitter gourd juice. Sophie stood on the BFG's hand. The BFG turned on the tap to wash Sophie clean. Then he lit the stove to dry her clothes. The giant placed Sophie on his shoulder and took her along to catch dreams. As they passed by the carnivorous giant, the BFG stumbled. The carnivorous giant lifted the BFG up. Sophie darted through the grass and hid inside a car. Rain began to fall from the sky. The giants sought shelter. Some held umbrellas, some grabbed trees, and others wrapped themselves in sacks and hid in caves. The BFG picked up Sophie's glasses. Sophie crawled into the BFG's satchel. The BFG took Sophie to the dream tree. Sophie captured a yellow dream and placed it in a glass jar. Watching the dream take shape in the jar, Sophie had an idea. That night, the BFG and Sophie delivered the captured dreams to the sleeping people. Sophie and the BFG collaborated to create a nightmare. This dream featured missing children, Sophie, and the giant, the BFG. They delivered this crafted dream to the queen. In the morning, the queen described her dream from the previous night to her secretary. The secretary was astonished to find that the queen's dreams were all true. The queen looked at Sophie standing on the windowsill in surprise. Sophie was the girl from the queen's dream last night. The queen asked Sophie where the giant from her dream was. Sophie then introduced the BFG to the queen. The BFG greeted the queen and climbed into Buckingham Palace. Upon entering, he accidentally knocked over the ceiling lamp. The BFG sat at the specially made table and began eating the delicious food before him with a giant fork. After taking a sip of coffee, the giant let out another fart. The BFG offered everyone his special green drink. The queen, the guards, the generals, and even the little dogs all drank the green beverage. Soon after, the first person farted, followed by the second and the third. Even the queen let out a fart, and the three little dogs each had their own. The BFG led the Air Force to giant country. Sophie smashed a bottle, releasing the nightmare. The carnivorous giant, inhaling the nightmare, was quickly subdued by the Air Force. A transport plane lifted the carnivorous giant across the sea and exiled him to a small island. As he looked at the crates of bitter gourd and seeds, the carnivorous giant roared angrily at the sky.